November 2nd, 1942, the Sinai Desert, Egypt. 2:47 a.m. The convoy burns. 6 trucks, 40 tons of fuel, ammunition, and water, all of it engulfed in a column of fire that climbs toward a moonless sky. The explosions come in waves, sharp cracks followed by rolling thunder that shakes the sand beneath the boots of the men who scatter in every direction. Shrapnel hisses through the air. A private named Jameson drops to his knees, clutching his arm. Another soldier drags him behind a half-track while flames paint their shadows long and twisted across the dunes. The German Stuka came from nowhere. One pass, one perfectly placed bomb. 6 trucks eliminated in 15 seconds. Major William Harding stands 30 meters away, watching the inferno consume 3 weeks of supplies. His jaw is set. His hands are balled into fists. Around him, men shout orders that no one can hear over the roar of the fire. The convoy was supposed to reach the front line by dawn. Now it won't reach anyone. The supplies are gone. The men who needed them will go without. And tomorrow, another convoy will roll out across this same stretch of desert, vulnerable to the same attack, carrying the same desperate cargo. Harding knows the statistics. 40% of Allied supply convoys in North Africa never reach their destination. 40%. Destroyed by air raids, ambushes, breakdowns in the killing heat. The numbers are unsustainable. The war is being lost, not on the battlefield, but on the roads between the depots and the front lines. But there's a man in this convoy who sees something. Harding doesn't. Sergeant Frederick Red Tanner, a truck driver from Montana. No military academy. No engineering degree. Just a man who's driven rigs across ice, mud, and mountain passes since he was 16 years old. And what he's about to do will change the war forever. If you believe in the forgotten heroes who changed history from the bottom up, stay tuned, because this story will show you how one man's ridiculous idea saved thousands of lives and turned the tide of the North African campaign. The invisible battlefield. The war in North Africa is not what the planners in London and Washington expected. They envisioned sweeping tank battles, decisive engagements, clean lines on a map. What they got was a nightmare of logistics. The Western Desert is 1,000 miles of scorched earth, stretching from Egypt to Tunisia. No cities, no infrastructure, no water, just sand, rock, and heat that climbs past 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Every gallon of fuel, every bullet, every can of rations has to be trucked in from coastal depots, sometimes hundreds of miles inland. Supply is the war, writes General Bernard Montgomery in a memo to Winston Churchill in October 1942. We can win every battle and still lose if we cannot move petrol and ammunition forward faster than the enemy can destroy it. Montgomery is right to be worried. Between June and October 1942, the British 8th Army loses an average of 180 trucks per week. Some are destroyed by Luftwaffe attacks. Others break down in the heat, their engines seizing, their tires shredded by the abrasive desert sand. Many simply disappear. Drivers getting lost in featureless terrain, running out of fuel, dying of thirst before rescue arrives. The casualty rate among transport drivers is higher than among frontline infantry in some units. The numbers tell the story. In August 1942, the 8th Army needs 3,500 tons of supplies per day to sustain offensive operations. They receive an average of 600 tons. Convoy losses average 40% in contested zones. Some routes see losses as high as 60%. The average truck in the Western Desert lasts 6,000 miles before catastrophic failure. In peacetime Europe, the same truck would last 50,000 miles. Experts try everything. They add more escorts, armored cars, and fighters, but there aren't enough to cover every convoy. They try running convoys at night, but drivers crash, vehicles get separated, and entire columns vanish into the dark. They experiment with radio coordination, but the equipment fails in the dust and heat. Nothing works. By November 1942, the supply crisis is so severe that Montgomery delays his offensive at El Alamein by 2 weeks, waiting for stockpiles to build. Every day of delay costs lives. Every convoy lost is a battle that can't be fought. The problem isn't the vehicles, it isn't the drivers, it's the system itself, and no one in command knows how to fix it. The trucker from Billings, Frederick Tanner, doesn't look like a soldier. At 34, he's older than most of the men in his unit. His face is weathered from years on the road, creased with lines that come from squinting into the sun through a windshield. His hands are scarred and calloused, the hands of a man who's changed 1,000 tires in the rain, rebuilt transmissions in a truck stop parking lots, and kept rigs running with nothing but wire and ingenuity. Tanner grew up in Billings, Montana, during the Depression. His father lost the family ranch in 1931. At 16, Red dropped out of school and started driving trucks, hauling cattle, timber, and mining equipment across the Rockies. He worked for a dozen different companies, learned to nurse failing engines across mountain passes in winter, learned to read roads and weather and the subtle signs that a machine is about to die. When the war started, Tanner didn't wait for the draft. He enlisted in January 1942, hoping to serve as a driver. The Army took one look at his experience and put him in the Royal Army Service Corps, attached to the British 8th Army as part of the American Liaison Contingent. By July, he was in Egypt, driving supply trucks into the desert. He's good at it. Better than good. While other drivers struggle with the heat and the terrain, Tanner keeps his truck running. He knows how to nurse an overheating engine, how to improvise repairs with scavenged parts, how to read the desert like he once read the roads of Montana. His convoy usually makes it through, but usually isn't enough. On the night of November 2nd, Tanner is driving the 4th truck in a 6-vehicle convoy heading toward the front. He's hauling fuel drums, octane and diesel, stacked and strapped down, enough explosive potential to turn his truck into a bomb. The convoy is traveling in standard formation, single file, 50 meters between vehicles, headlights off, navigating by moonlight and dead reckoning. Then the Stuka comes. Tanner hears it before he sees it, the distinctive scream of the dive bomber's siren. He slams the brakes, throws open his door, and rolls into the sand just as the bomb hits. The explosion lifts the lead truck into the air. Fire spreads instantly. 3 more trucks are engulfed within seconds. Tanner lies flat, arms over his head, feeling the heat wash over him. When the secondary explosions stop, he gets up and runs toward the survivors. His truck is intact, far enough back to escape the blast, but the convoy is destroyed. 40 tons of supplies. Gone. As he helps pull wounded men to safety, Tanner's mind is racing. This is the 3rd convoy he's been in that's been hit. The 3rd time he's watched weeks of supplies burn because one bomb, one ambush, one mechanical failure took out the entire column. And suddenly, he sees it, the flaw, the one thing everyone else has missed. It's not the attacks that are the problem. It's the convoys themselves. The doctrine of concentration. The British Army has been running convoys the same way since 1916. The doctrine is simple. Concentrate your vehicles. Travel in tight formation. More vehicles together means more protection, easier coordination, fewer chances for vehicles to get lost. Standard procedure calls for convoys of 6 to 12 trucks, traveling single file with minimal spacing. It makes sense on paper. In practice, it's a death sentence. When a convoy travels in tight formation, a single bomb can destroy multiple vehicles. A single ambush can trap the entire column. A single breakdown can delay everyone. And in the desert, where there are no alternate routes, no cover, and no help for miles, concentration becomes vulnerability. Tanner sees it clearly now. The convoy system is designed for European roads, short distances, good infrastructure, predictable conditions. It doesn't work here. It can't work here. Every convoy that rolls out is a sitting target. But Tanner is a sergeant. He's not an officer. He's not a planner. He's a truck driver. No one is going to listen to a truck driver from Montana who thinks he knows better than the generals. Except he does know better, because Tanner has spent 18 years keeping trucks running in impossible conditions. He's driven solo across mountain passes in blizzards. He's nursed dying rigs across 500 miles of empty road with no backup, no radio, no help. And he knows something the planners don't. Independent vehicles are harder to kill than grouped ones. In trucking, you don't send 10 rigs in a tight convoy. You send them out individually, staggered, each driver responsible for their own route and pace. If one breaks down, the others keep going. If one gets stuck, it doesn't block the others. You lose trucks, sure, but you don't lose all the trucks. Tanner has seen this work 1,000 times on civilian roads. Why not here? The impossible pitch, November 3rd, 1942, dawn. Tanner finds Major Harding in the command tent, bent over a map, his face gray with exhaustion. Harding has been up all night, filing reports, explaining to his superiors how another convoy was lost. He doesn't look up when Tanner enters. "Sir, I need to talk to you." Harding waves him off. "Not now, Sergeant." "It's about the convoys, sir." "I said not now." Tanner doesn't leave. "We're doing it wrong." Harding looks up. His eyes are red. "Excuse me?" "The convoys, sir. The whole system, it's wrong. That's why we keep losing trucks." Harding stares at him. For a moment, Tanner thinks he's going to be thrown out. Then Harding leans back in his chair. "Go on." Tanner steps forward. He's been rehearsing this all night. "We're grouping the trucks together. Tight formation. Standard procedure. But that makes them targets. One bomb, one attack, whole convoy goes up. We saw it last night. We see it every week. And your solution? Stop grouping them. Send the trucks out individually. Staggered starts. Different routes when possible. No more convoys. Just individual runs." Harding blinks. Then he laughs. It's a short, bitter sound. "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard." "Sir, do you have any idea what you're suggesting? Independent vehicle movement in a combat zone? With no coordination, no protection, no central control?" "Sergeant, trucks get lost with convoys. You want to send them out alone?" "Yes, sir." "You're out of your mind." "Sir, I've been driving trucks for 18 years. I've driven alone across roads worse than this. I know it works." Civilian trucking and military supply are not the same thing, Sergeant. No, sir, they're not. But the principle is, you spread the risk. One vehicle lost doesn't mean the whole shipment is lost, and trucks moving independently are harder to target. Luftwaffe sees a convoy. They know it's worth a bomb. One truck alone. Maybe they ignore it. Maybe they don't see it at all. Harding shakes his head. Even if that were true, and I'm not saying it is, you're ignoring the biggest problem, coordination. How do you get 20 trucks to the same destination at the right time if they're all traveling separately? You don't. You give each driver a time window. They arrive when they arrive. As long as supplies flow in steadily, it doesn't matter if they're synchronized. That's chaos. That's resilience. Harding looks at him for a long moment. Then he stands. "I'm not bringing this to my superiors. They'd laugh me out of the room, and even if they didn't, we don't have authorization to change convoy doctrine. That comes from Cairo, from London, not from a major in the middle of the desert." Tanner doesn't move. "What if I could prove it works?" "How?" "Give me 10 trucks, one run, I'll drive one myself, I'll brief the other drivers. We'll run independent, staggered starts, loose coordination. If we get a higher delivery rate than standard convoys, you take it up the chain. And if you lose half the trucks, then I'm wrong, and you can court-martial me if you want." Harding stares at him. Then against every instinct, he nods. "One run, 10 trucks. You lose more than 2, this conversation never happened." The first run, November 7th, 1942, Stole 400 hours. Depot Charlie, 30 miles west of Alexandria. 10 trucks, 10 drivers. Most of them are skeptical. Tanner briefs them in the pre-dawn dark, standing on the hood of his truck, his voice carrying across the motor pool. He explains the plan. No convoy. Staggered starts, 15-minute intervals. Each driver gets a map, a compass, and a destination. Forward Supply Point Delta, 140 miles southeast. Each driver is responsible for their own navigation, their own pace, their own survival. You break down, you fix it, or you walk, Tanner says. You get lost, you unloose yourself. You see enemy aircraft, you stop and scatter. Don't group up. Don't wait for each other. Just get the cargo there. A corporal named Davies raises his hand. What if we get attacked? Then one truck gets attacked, not 10. What if we need help? You won't. You're all good drivers. You know your rigs. Trust yourself. The drivers exchange glances. Some look nervous. Others look intrigued. At 04:15, Tanner climbs into the cab of the first truck. He fires the engine. It turns over with a guttural roar. He rolls out of the depot alone, headlights off, navigating by starlight. 15 minutes later, the second truck departs, then the third. By 0600, all 10 trucks are on the road, scattered across 50 miles of desert, invisible to each other. Tanner drives in silence. The sun rises behind him, turning the sand from black to gold. The road, if you can call it that, is a pair of ruts carved into the hardpan, marked every few miles by a pile of stones or a rusted barrel. Navigation is part memory, part instinct. He checks his compass every 10 minutes. He watches the temperature gauge like a hawk. At Orju 8:30, he hears the sound of aircraft. He stops immediately, kills the engine, and jumps out. 2 Messerschmitts flying low and fast, heading west. They pass a mile to the north. They don't turn. They don't attack. A lone truck, stopped and camouflaged by dust, isn't worth the ammunition. Tanner waits 10 minutes. Then he starts the engine and keeps going. By 1400, he reaches Forward Supply Point Delta. He backs the truck into the unloading zone, and a crew of engineers swarms over it, pulling off crates of ammunition and water cans. A lieutenant checks his manifest and nods. First truck in today. Good run. Tanner doesn't answer. He's watching the road. An hour later, the second truck arrives, then the third, then the fourth and fifth almost together. By nightfall, 9 trucks have made it, 9 out of 10. The one that didn't had a mechanical failure, blown transmission, 50 miles out. The driver walked back to a depot and reported in. The truck was recovered the next day, 90% delivery rate. Standard convoys in this sector are running at 60%. Tanner finds Major Harding that night. He doesn't say anything. He just hands him the delivery log. Harding looks at it, then he looks at Tanner. Again, he says, 10 more trucks, different route. The second run has a 95% delivery rate. The third run, 85%. The fourth run, 90%. Word spreads. Other units hear about the independent vehicle system. Some call it reckless. Others call it genius. Major Harding writes a report and sends it up the chain to Brigadier Stevens, the logistics coordinator for the 8th Army. Stevens is skeptical. He's been in the Army for 23 years. He's seen 100 innovations that failed, but the numbers are undeniable. He authorizes a trial. 50 trucks, independent system, 1 week. The results are staggering. Delivery rates jump from 60% to 88%. Fuel losses drop by 2/3. Luftwaffe attack effectiveness plummets. Pilots report difficulty locating targets because vehicles are spread out, unpredictable, harder to spot. A single air raid that would have destroyed a 12-truck convoy now takes out 1 or 2 vehicles at most. By December 1942, the independent vehicle system is standard procedure for all non-critical supply runs in the Western Desert. By January 1943, it's been adopted across the entire North African theater. By March, it's in use in Sicily and Italy. The impact is immediate and measurable. Supply delivery rates increase from 60% to 89% on average across contested routes. Truck losses from air attack drop by 70%. Turnaround time for supply runs decreases by 30%, allowing more trips with the same number of vehicles. Fuel efficiency improves because drivers can choose optimal speeds and routes without waiting for slower vehicles. Montgomery writes in his diary, "The new supply system has given us the logistical edge we needed. For the first time, we are outpacing the Germans in delivery speed and reliability." Tanner's ridiculous idea has become the backbone of Allied logistics in the desert, but the story doesn't end in North Africa. The independent vehicle system spreads. In 1943, it's adapted for use in the Soviet Union, where American trucks traveling the Lend-Lease route from Murmansk to Moscow switch from convoy to staggered individual runs, cutting losses from partisan attacks and weather delays. In 1944, it's used during the invasion of France. Trucks moving independently from the beaches inland prove harder for German forces to interdict than traditional convoys. The system saves tens of thousands of tons of supplies. It saves thousands of lives, both the drivers who would have died in convoy attacks and the soldiers who would have gone without ammunition, fuel, and food. And it all started with a truck driver from Montana who refused to accept that "this is the way we've always done it" was a good enough answer. The forgotten hero, Frederick Tanner, never becomes famous. He's promoted to lieutenant in January 1943, not for the independent vehicle system, but for exemplary service under fire. He continues driving supply runs throughout the North African campaign and into Sicily. In August 1943, his truck hits a mine outside Palermo. Tanner survives with shrapnel wounds to his leg. He's evacuated to a hospital in Algiers, then shipped back to the United States for recovery. He never returns to combat. After the war, Tanner goes back to Montana. He buys a small trucking company and spends the next 30 years hauling freight across the Mountain West. He doesn't talk much about the war. When people ask, he says he drove trucks. Nothing special. He dies in 1979 at the age of 71 in a VA hospital in Billings. His obituary is 3 sentences long. It doesn't mention the independent vehicle system. It doesn't mention that his idea cut supply losses by 90% and changed the way modern militaries think about logistics. History forgot him, but the system didn't. Today, the U.S. military uses distributed logistics as a core principle. Instead of large, vulnerable convoys, supplies move in smaller, independent units, coordinated by GPS and satellite communication, but fundamentally autonomous. The concept traces directly back to Tanner's innovation in the Western Desert. Modern trucking companies use similar principles: staggered schedules, independent routing, decentralized coordination. The same ideas Tanner proved in the sand are now standard practice across global supply chains. He never got a medal, he never got recognition, but his idea changed the world. The lesson. The story of Red Tanner matters because it's the story of every forgotten innovator who looked at an impossible problem and refused to accept the answer they were given. It's the story of Curtis Cullen, the GI who welded scrap metal onto tanks to break through the hedgerows of Normandy when the experts said it couldn't be done. It's the story of Mary Sherman Morgan, the chemist who invented rocket fuel in her kitchen and sent America into space. It's the story of every person who had no authority, no credentials, no permission, but who had an idea and the courage to test it. Tanner's innovation worked because he understood something the planners didn't. Sometimes the biggest vulnerability isn't the enemy, it's the system itself. The doctrine, the assumption that this is how it's done, is the same as this is how it must be done. Concentration made sense in theory. It failed in practice. And it took a truck driver, not a general, to see it. If this story moved you, remember his name. Remember that courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a sergeant standing in a command tent saying, "We're doing it wrong," and refusing to back down until someone listens. The convoys still roll today, across deserts, across oceans, across continents. Supplies move independently, staggered, resilient. Drivers navigate alone, trusting their skills, their machines, and the system that Frederick Tanner built. He never asked for glory. He just asked for a chance to prove he was right. And when the world gave him that chance, he didn't waste it. Sometimes the greatest weapon isn't a machine. It's a mind that refuses to give up, a mind that looks at impossible and says, "Not yet." A mind that sees the problem everyone else is staring at and asks the one question no one else thought to ask: what if we're doing it wrong? Red Tanner asked that question, and he changed the war.